High above the clouds, where the air tastes like peppermint and the sun kisses the peaks of the blue mountains, lived Tenzin, a young goatherd with a flute carved from cedar and a heart full of dreams. Tenzin spent his days with his old reliables, a small flock of goats with bells that jingled a messy, happy tune. His favorite was Pema, a stout goat with ears like velvet, who would nudge his hand whenever he felt lonely. They were a family of simple means, sharing dried apricots and songs under the prayer flags fluttering in the wind. One evening, a great frost rolled in, painting the meadows in silver. Seeking shelter in Tenzin's cave came a band of wild cloud jumpers, majestic goats with coats that shimmered like moonlight and horns that spiraled toward the stars. Tenzin was awestruck. Compared to his dusty, brown-furred companions, these wild visitors looked like royalty from a forgotten legend. He decided right then that he must convince them to stay forever, imagining how grand he would look leading a flock of moonbeams through the village square. Desperate to win their favor, Tenzin emptied his winter stores. He gave the wild cloud jumpers the sweet, sun-dried star clover, the highest quality forage he had saved for emergencies. He filled their troughs with warmed spring waters scented with wild mint. Meanwhile, he tossed his own loyal flock nothing but the yellowed, brittle stalks of last year's straw. "You are used to the rough life," he whispered to Pema as she sniffed the dry dust, her large eyes filled with a quiet, confused sadness. "But these beauties, they need a reason to call this home." Days passed, and the cave grew quiet. Tenzin's original goats grew thin, their coats losing their luster. Pema no longer nudged his hand. She merely huddled with the others for warmth, watching as the wild goats feasted on the finest treats without so much as a thankful bleat. The wild goats grew plump and strong, but they stayed near the cave's edge, eyes fixed on the distant, jagged peaks, indifferent to Tenzin's flute and his desperate attempts to be their friend. Loyalty, Tenzin didn't realize, cannot be bought with stolen clover. As the first golden rays of spring melted the ice, the wild cloud jumpers didn't hesitate. With a powerful spring of their hooves, they bolted toward the high ridges. Tenzin shouted, "Wait! I gave you the best of everything! Why leave?" The leader of the wild goats paused for a moment, his eyes cold as a glacier. "You treated us like kings because we were new," the goat seemed to say with a flick of its tail. "But you treated your friends like ghosts. Why would we stay with a master who forgets those who love him?" Tenzin stood alone in the melting snow, the silence of the mountains heavy on his shoulders. He turned back to the cave to find Pema and the others. They were weak, their bells barely chiming as they stood to leave him too. Panic seized his heart. He hadn't just lost the wild beauty he chased. He had almost broken the golden bond he already owned. He knelt in the dirt, tears stinging his eyes, and shared his own meager lunch of roasted barley with Pema, whispering 1,000 I'm sorries into her matted fur. True forgiveness doesn't happen in a heartbeat, but it begins with a step. Tenzin spent the spring climbing the steepest cliffs to find the freshest moss for his old reliables. He polished their bells until they shone like mirrors, and played his flute until the valleys rang with joy. Pema eventually gave him a gentle nudge, her velvet ears twitching in the sun. Tenzin learned that the most beautiful flock isn't the one that shines like the moon, but the one that stays by your side when the sun goes down.